Hey guys, welcome back to the Friday Vlog where we discuss activity that goes on here with the BuzWeaver channel. That includes things like current events, headlines that are in the news, pop culture, social media, technology, and just items of interest that come up during the week that allow us to have a little bit of a dialogue. If this is your first time here to the channel, I'd like to welcome you here, as well as all the returning visitors. Your guys' participation is always appreciated. This week in gaming, we had quite a bit of information, starting it off with Infinity Ward on Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We saw the release of Double Experience, Double Weapon Experience, and Double Tier Progression for all of us who are playing Call of Duty, of course. If you guys want to check out the details to that, I will put it up here in the top right-hand corner. And below the video, I will provide a link to the latest community news, making all the announcements of what we can anticipate for this week. And from DICE, Battlefield 5, we saw the release of Chapter 6, the Solomon Islands into the Jungle. The map was released early, actually, on Tuesday, so that was quite exciting for all of us to experience that. As well as we were supposed to receive weapons through the Chapter Rewards progression. However, some of those weapons were made available to us. It was a bit of a bug. Some people got the weapons and then they decided, well, because we made a bit of an error, we're going to go ahead and let everyone go ahead and get those weapons that were released. However, I think there are going to be one or two or a few that'll still be released with Chapter Rewards. If you guys want to learn more about Battlefield's newest release, Chapter 6, I'll leave a link below this video. Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook, announced that he was going to allow more freedom of expression on his platform, despite levels of irritation that certain users of the platform may experience. Now, of course, we have talked about this for quite some time here on the channel, the levels of censorship that the tech giants implement. But of course, it is an interesting choice of words for those who may be paying attention, and that he said freedom of expression, of course, versus freedom of speech, because the platforms do reserve their right to protect their intellectual property. So we as users have to agree to the terms of services and the end user license agreements. So it is kind of interesting to see that Zuckerberg says that he was going to allow these levels of freedom of expression. Now, what they will entail, how these will be defined, what content will or will not be allowed, we have not yet, or we don't quite know just yet. But we do know, and as we have discussed here on the channel, that the tech giants have a tendency to censor certain groups of individuals over others. So it'll be interesting to see how Mark balances all this out. And we do know, of course, Jack Dorsey there at Twitter has said that he is going to not allow any form of campaigning, campaign ads, or other types of political discourse, at least for this campaign season of 2020. And we have seen kind of groups applaud that, and then those who did applaud it suddenly realized that when they wanted to espouse their ideologies and philosophies and their own forms of campaigning, they were told that they could not do it. So you have to be very careful when you're out there trying to petition these platforms to take an extra look at a certain person's post or what may be on the platform, because it may end up being you who gets censored. But it is interesting to see that at least Zuckerberg is open and receptive to the concept. But a lot of it could be just business related, right? Because we're seeing a lot of pressure from certain groups and certain organizations to say, hey, why is this allowed and that not allowed? And unfortunately, as you guys know, we live in a cancel culture wokeness type of social media civil war that happens to be going on in the background, as we have discussed here, and you guys are probably aware. But nonetheless, it is interesting to see that Mark is at least allowing for levels of expression to be on his platform, and we'll just kind of have to see what those levels are and what they all will entail. But nonetheless, guys, you can read the article, which I will link down there in the published section below this video. Monday, February the 3rd, kicked off the Iowa Caucus, or the Hawkeye Caucus, as many of us like to call it. It is the beginning of the 2020 election season. And if you're not familiar, this is the time that the Democrat Party is selecting their particular candidate to represent them in the 2020 election. And things could not have gone any worse for them at every single level. Now, some may say, aren't you injecting a bit of your bias into this? Not at all. It was a very huge disaster for the Democrats at every level. And unfortunately for them, one of the biggest causes or biggest issues had to do with an app that the delegate captains were using to report in information from the caucus. And essentially what happened was a group of Hillary Clinton veterans designed this. Shadow Inc. is the name of the company. Now, of course, if you're going to be making a voting system, you're going to name it Shadow, considering all of the particular concerns that people have about voting here in the States. But nonetheless, apparently the Shadow Inc. company who coded this particular app was having all sorts of issues. And even when the captains tried to call in their information and tabulations, they were getting placed on hold, or their phone calls were being dropped. So we didn't even get the results until Tuesday evening, well beyond the time that we would normally have any sorts of results. And again, to add to the complete disaster, and I feel kind of badly about phrasing it that way, but it was a really bad showing for the Democrats at every level, and in particular, I will show those results now on the screen. As you can see, Pete Buttigieg essentially won there in Iowa with 26.8%, followed by Bernie with 25.2%, Elizabeth Warren 18.4%, Joe Biden, the lead, the workhorse, the former vice president of the United States, who was going to be pretty much the champion for the Democrats, came in 4th place, followed by Amy Klobuchar at 12.6%. This was not just with the issue with the app or with the phone calls or with the tabulations or with the voting systems, but the lead person for the Democrats, Joe Biden, came in 4th place. Pete Buttigieg, who many probably didn't even know who he was or could even pronounce his name, won. Now, of course, we will be moving on to New Hampshire next week to see how that turns out. So hopefully maybe the Democrats can salvage a little bit of face from what happened here in Iowa. But I think that the impressions have been made, particularly with impeachment and with the president having done the State of the Union last night, and kind of the reception that he got from some of those in the Democratic Party. Of course, we are awaiting, as of this recording, for the impeachment process to possibly end with an acquittal of the president. So things are not looking very good for the Democrats, at least kicking it off in 2020. And the Iowa caucuses was an example that maybe many of the moderates or the undecideds maybe have said, hey, look, I don't think this party is really going to be for us. The turnout was extraordinarily low, incredibly low, far lower than they had anticipated. It just was not a very good showing for the Democrats. And as we have discussed here, it's looking very good for President Trump. He just had his highest approval rating, despite the fact that we have the impeachment, despite the fact that the Iowa caucuses were supposed to be some big energizing, charging kickoff for the Democrats. It was not a very good turnout at all. Guys, I will leave links for you down in the published section for you guys to read up on more of the details. The links will be down there below this video. Also on Monday, February the 3rd, radio personality Rush Limbaugh announced that he had advanced stages of lung cancer. Rush has been a radio personality for most of his life, but in 1988, he started the EIB network, the Excellence in Broadcasting. He was one of the very few conservative voices at the time, because it wasn't until 1996 that Fox News was out there, and they were perceived as the new conservative, or not the new conservative, but the conservative news source out there, aside from Rush Limbaugh. Now, of course, being a conservative can be challenging within the sphere of media. As we have discussed for quite some time, there is, of course, levels of bias within the media. That should be no mystery to anyone. But nonetheless, Rush came at a point where we really needed conservative, or a conservative voice, someone to represent the conservative ideology, since we had moved past Ronald Reagan and into Bush and into the Clinton years. So the thing here is that, for many years, you could always turn on the radio at noon here, Eastern time, and Rush Limbaugh would be there. And the idea that he's going to be dealing with and struggling with this condition. I hope very much that he can recover from this. Now, people usually in stage 4 can be kind of touch and go. Thankfully, we have incredible technology right now in the medical field that allows for advanced treatments of these conditions. And we know, for example, Alex Trebek announced that he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, as well as Steve Jobs. But usually with pancreatic cancer, well, cancer in general can be different depending on the organ, depending on the part of the body, depending on its spread and so forth. So I don't want to go into all the particular details of percentages and things like that, but suffice it to say that I wish Rush all the best. I have been listening to him since '94. And it's just one of those things where just in your day, if things are going a certain way or whatever, and you just want to kind of like a little bit of a distraction, he would always be on every single day at noon to do his show. And it was just something that is just part of the American experience, you know, this iconic figure. And it was incredible to see that during the State of the Union on Tuesday that President Trump gave him the highest honor a civilian can have, and that is the Medal of Freedom. But nonetheless, so Rush Limbaugh announced his advanced stages of cancer on Monday. If you guys want to read more about that, I will leave links to that, of course, below this video. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for this Friday vlog. A lot of material, lots of things going on this week. And of course, it will be interesting to see how a lot of these other things unfold. But nonetheless, guys, I would encourage you now to click that like button down there, as your participation and engagement here on the channel is greatly appreciated. We are kind of in challenging times here as YouTube creators. And of course, now appearing there on the screen, that would be the obligatory channel icon for you guys to click on and subscribe, along with notifications. That way you guys will know when there is additional content here on the channel, as well as the release of the Friday vlogs. And I will see you guys right there behind the camera next week.